The night on Station 47 was colder than usual, the metal floors shining under the pale blue lights, and the wind carrying the smell of rust and smoke. People walked fast, keeping their heads low, not looking at anyone, not caring about anything except themselves. But in one dark corner near the trash containers, a small paralyzed alien girl lay helpless. Her thin arms trembled, her legs did not move, and her breathing was weak like a dying whisper. Her name was Lyra, and she never understood why the universe was so cruel to her. Only 1 hour ago, she had been pushed out of a transport vehicle like useless garbage. The thugs who threw her out did not even look back. They laughed as the doors shut, their voices echoing in her ears. "You can't walk. You can't speak properly. You are worthless," they said. Their words cut deeper than any injury. Now she lay in the cold darkness, the station lights blinking above her. Every time she tried to call for help, her voice cracked like breaking glass. People saw her, but they walked around her carefully, pretending she did not exist. To them, she was just another broken alien child in a place where no one cared. Her fingers twitched as she tried to drag herself forward, but her legs stayed still like dead weight. Tears formed in her glowing silver eyes. She thought she would die here, alone, forgotten. Her small chest rose and fell slowly, each breath weaker than the last. Then, suddenly, she heard footsteps. Steady and strong, coming closer. At first, she felt fear, thinking the thugs had returned. But then a gentle human voice whispered, "Hey, what's that sound?" A man stopped near the trash containers. His name was Evan, a simple cargo worker with tired eyes and a warm heart that he tried to hide from the world. He worked long shifts, carrying heavy crates, earning just enough to survive. He was not a hero, not a soldier, not anyone important. But fate had brought him here at the exact moment. Lyra needed someone the most. Evan bent down slowly, listening again. He heard the faint, painful sound of a child trying to breathe. He moved the boxes aside and finally saw her. Lyra looked up at him with terrified eyes, her tiny hands shaking. Evan felt his heart freeze. He had seen suffering before, but never something so unfair, so cruel. "Oh no." Hey, it's okay," he whispered softly. He kneeled beside her, his hands shaking slightly as he checked her pulse. "She's freezing. She's hurt. Who would do this to a child?" He said under his breath, but Lyra could not answer. Her lips opened, but only a weak noise came out. She tried to lift her hand toward him, asking for help without words. Evan felt something heavy hit his chest. He could not leave her here. He could not pretend he didn't see. He gently slid his arms under her fragile body and lifted her as carefully as he could. Lyra felt warmth for the first time in hours. She closed her eyes, letting herself trust him, even if it was dangerous. But just as Evan stood up with her in his arms, something strange happened. A small red light appeared on his chest. He looked down, confused, a laser sight. Someone was aiming at him from the shadows. He turned slowly, his heart beating fast. In the distance, a group of dark silhouettes stood on a metal balcony above. They were watching, unmoving, silent, their glowing helmets reflected the station lights. They were not normal thugs. They were professional hunters, and they were tracking Lyra. One of them raised a metallic device and pressed a button. Evan's communicator beeped suddenly, showing a warning he had never seen before. "Do not interfere, human. Leave the girl or face termination." Evan felt cold fear run down his spine. He looked at Lyra in his arms, then at the hunters above. He could drop her and walk away. He could save himself. But when he looked into Lyra's terrified eyes, he knew he could never do that. He gripped her tighter and whispered, "I don't care who you are. I'm not leaving her." The hunters stepped forward, ready to attack. Evan turned and ran into the narrow alleys of Station 47, carrying Lyra close to his chest. Every step echoed loudly. Every breath felt like a battle. Behind him, the hunters followed slowly. Confidently, they were not worried. They believed they would catch him soon. But they did not understand one thing. The universe had just made a mistake. It had allowed a human to find a child who needed him and humans. Never give up easily. The chase had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. Evan ran through the narrow metal alleys of Station 47, his heart beating like a drum, his arms wrapped tightly around the paralyzed alien girl. Behind him, the hunter's footsteps echoed like slow thunder, powerful and confident. They did not run. They did not rush. They followed calmly, as if they already knew how this chase would end. But Evan refused to stop. He turned into a dim passage filled with broken pipes and flickering lights. The air smelled of burned wires and oil. But he kept going. Lyra's small body shivered against his chest. Even in her weakness, she tried to hold on to his shirt with her trembling fingers. Evan whispered, "It's okay, I'm here. I won't let them take you." But even he did not know how long he could protect her. When he reached a rusty metal door, he kicked it open and entered an abandoned storage room. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars, and old crates were scattered everywhere. He gently placed Lyra on a pile of soft fabric that looked like old blankets. Her glowing silver eyes opened slowly, confused and scared. Evan knelt beside her and asked softly, "Who were those people? Why are they after you?" But Lyra shook her head weakly. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. It looked like speaking hurt her. Evan checked the door quickly, trying to catch his breath. He closed it silently, pushed crates against it, and then returned to her side. He looked closely at her wounds. Her legs were completely still, and strange blue marks ran along her spine. It looked like she had been injected with something painful, something unnatural. "Did they do this to you?" Evan asked, his voice filled with anger he had never felt before. Lyra blinked slowly, a single tear falling down her cheek. She nodded, barely. Evan felt rage burning inside him. How could someone hurt a child like this? Why would anyone want her dead? But before he could question her more, a sudden vibration spread through the floor. The hunters were close, too close. They were scanning the area, searching room by room. Evan looked around desperately for a hiding place. The storage room had only one exit and no secret tunnels. He cursed under his breath, unsure what to do next. Then Lyra suddenly lifted her hand and touched his wrist. Her fingers were cold, but the touch stopped him instantly. Her eyes glowed brighter than before, shimmering like liquid silver. For the first time she tried to speak. Her voice cracked but came out clear enough. "They cannot find me." "Not yet." Evan leaned closer. "You know them? Why are they hunting you?" Lyra struggled to breathe, but she forced out the words slowly. "Because I am not supposed to live." Her voice was tiny, but the meaning stabbed Evan like a knife. "What does that mean?" he whispered. Lyra reached for the collar of her torn clothing and pulled it slightly aside. A small glowing symbol was etched into her skin. It looked like a delicate pattern of shining lines, moving softly like breathing light. Evan had never seen anything like it before. He touched it gently and felt a faint pulse of energy. "What is this?" he asked, stunned. Lyra swallowed hard. "They call me the Axiom Seed." Her voice trembled. "They fear what I can become." Evan froze. He had heard whispers about something called the Axiom Order, an ancient alien lineage known for controlling powerful energy. But he always believed it was just a story, a myth for children. Yet here it was alive, fragile and injured, lying in front of him. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength. "They tried to erase me before the activation time." Her small fingers gripped his hand tightly. "They think a paralyzed child cannot be the next heir." Evan felt a shock run through him. This girl, this little broken girl, was meant to inherit something enormous, something dangerous. No wonder hunters were chasing her. No wonder they wanted her dead. Before he could respond, the metal door shook violently. A blast of energy hit it from the outside, bending the steel inward. Dust fell from the ceiling as the hunters prepared to break in. Lyra's breathing grew faster, fear rising again. Evan grabbed an old metal rod and stood between her and the door. He knew he was no fighter, just a worker, but right now, he was the only wall between her and death. "You're safe with me," he whispered, even though he was scared himself. Suddenly, Lyra's symbol glowed brighter. A soft blue light spread across her skin. Her voice came out clearer than before. "I can hide us, but I need you to stay close." Evan knelt beside her quickly. She pressed her hand to his chest. Blue light wrapped around both of them like a warm shield. The door exploded. Hunters stormed in, but the room looked empty to them. The crates, the blankets, everything was there, except Evan and Lyra. They were still inside the room, but invisible, hidden in a thin layer of warped space. Lyra's last whisper trembled in the air. "They cannot see us." "But I cannot hold this long." Evan realized the truth. They had only minutes before the hunters discovered the trick, and they needed a real escape fast. The danger was growing, the mystery was deepening, and Evan had no choice but to carry her again and run into the unknown. The broken storage room trembled as the hunters searched violently, their boots hitting the floor like hammers, their scanners flooding the air with sharp red light. Evan stayed completely still, holding Lyra close while the blue shield wrapped around them like a thin veil. He could feel her tiny heart beating fast, her body shaking from fear and exhaustion. Her glowing mark flickered weakly on her skin, showing she could not hold this hidden state for long. One hunter walked only a few steps away from them. His armor hummed softly, and his helmet scanned every corner. Evan held his breath, praying the shield would stay strong. Lyra's fingers gripped his shirt tightly, her eyes squeezed shut. The hunter paused, sensing something strange. He turned his head slowly, looking directly at them, even though he could not see them. For a moment, Evan feared the shield had failed. But then the hunter stepped back and signaled that the room was clear. The hunters moved out, but they did not go far. They spread out around the hallway, guarding every exit. They were waiting like wolves surrounding injured prey. Lyra whispered weakly, her voice thin like a dying flame. "I cannot keep us hidden. We must move now." Evan nodded. Even though every part of him was shaking, the shield dissolved slowly, releasing them back into cold reality. He lifted Lyra again, surprised at how light she felt. She weighed almost nothing, as if her bones were paper. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes forced strength. "Follow the lower path," she whispered, pointing toward a small vent on the wall. Evan stared at it, confused. "It's too small," he said. Lyra shook her head. "The inside opens more. It leads to the undercity tunnels." Evan didn't hesitate. He kicked the vent cover loose and crawled inside with Lyra in his arms. The metal was cold and dirty, scraping his elbows and knees, but he kept moving, pushing himself deeper until the tunnel opened into a larger pipe system beneath the station. Behind them, a sharp alarm echoed through the corridors. The hunters had discovered traces of warped energy. They knew Lyra was still near. Evan slid down a slanted pipe and landed in a dark chamber filled with thick pipes and steam clouds. It felt like a maze built by someone with no sense of order. Lyra coughed, the sound echoing softly. He knelt beside her and touched her forehead, which was burning hot. "You're getting worse," he whispered, worried. Lyra looked up at him with shimmering eyes. Her voice trembled. "My powers drain me when I am hurt." She lifted a shaking hand to the glowing mark on her chest. "If I use it too much, I will die." Evan felt fear tighten his chest. He had to find safety, food, water, anything. But they were deep inside the Undercity, now a place known for danger. Strange creatures lived here, forgotten by the upper levels. And even worse, people who survived by stealing or killing. Before he could think, a soft metallic sound echoed from above. Evan looked up and froze small. Red scanner lights were moving across the ceiling vents. The hunters were tracking them from above. They had faster systems, smarter algorithms, and they had locked onto Lyra's energy signature. Evan carried her and ran, following the twisting tunnels, Steam hissed around him. Metal clanked under his boots. Lyra pointed weakly to the left. There. Go there. He followed her instinct, turning sharply into a narrow passage. But the moment he stepped inside, the ground shook. A massive shadow rose from the darkness. Something huge, reptilian, and ancient had awoken. Its yellow eyes opened. Staring directly at them, Evan froze. Lyra's eyes widened in terror. She whispered, "A tunnel guardian." "We must not move." The creature sniffed the air, its breath hot and heavy. Its long body slid along the ground with a metallic sound. Evan held Lyra close, not daring to breathe. The creature's head came close, its nose inches from Evan's face. It sniffed, then growled low and deep. Evan felt his heart stop. Then Lyra lifted her hand slowly, her fingers glowing faintly. A soft blue light pulsed. The creature's pupils widened. Its body relaxing instantly, it lowered its head and backed away. Evan stared in shock. "What did you do?" he whispered. Lyra whispered back, "Ancient species. Respect axiom energy." But the effort drained her, and she collapsed into his arms again. Her glow faded, and her breathing became dangerously weak. Evan knew he had only one choice. He had to reach the old underground medical station, rumored to exist in the Undercity. It was abandoned, but maybe something useful still remained. But before he could take a step, a sudden explosion rocked the tunnel behind them. Dust and debris flew everywhere. The hunters had breached the wall, emerging with bright weapons drawn. Their metallic voices echoed sharply. "Target located. Terminate immediately." Evan lifted Lyra and ran. The tunnel guardian roared, attacking the hunters, buying them precious seconds. But it wouldn't last long. The hunters were strong and heavily armed. The creature roared again, and the clash of metal and claws echoed violently behind them. Evan didn't look back. He ran deeper into the maze with Lyra. Her weak whisper reached his ear. "Evan, please don't stop." "I don't want to die." Evan tightened his grip and whispered, "You won't die, not while I'm breathing." The Undercity ahead was dark, dangerous, and unknown, but it was their only chance. And the hunters were getting closer every second. Evan ran deeper into the Undercity tunnels, carrying Lyra close to his chest. Her body felt colder with each passing moment, her breaths thin like soft threads of air. Behind them, distant metal echoes shook the tunnels, telling Evan the hunters were still fighting the tunnel guardian. But he knew it would not stop them for long. Those hunters were not normal soldiers. They were trained for impossible missions, and they never gave up. The tunnel ahead was narrow and filled with broken pipes and old cables. Steam hissed from cracked valves, creating white clouds that made every step harder. Evan's shoes splashed through puddles of oily water, and his heart pounded in his ears. He kept whispering to Lyra to stay awake, but her eyes fluttered weakly. She was fading, and he did not know how much time she had left. Finally, the tunnel widened into a lower industrial zone. Strange blue lights flickered from the old generators lining the walls. The machines hummed like tired beasts, shaking the ground gently. Evan had never been this deep before. Most workers avoided the Undercity because of the creatures, criminals, and broken tech left behind from old wars. But today, he had no choice. He had to save Lyra, no matter where he had to go. She opened her eyes slowly and whispered, "There is an old medical station somewhere ahead." Her voice trembled, as if each word cost her energy. Evan nodded and moved forward. He followed faded signs painted in alien symbols he barely understood. Luckily, Lyra could read them. Her small hand lifted each time there was a turn to take, guiding him through the maze. After several minutes, they reached a large chamber filled with broken glass floors and hanging wires. Half the lights were dead, and the other half flickered dangerously. A deep vibration rumbled through the metal structures. It felt like the whole Undercity was alive and breathing. Suddenly, a shadow moved behind a pillar. Evan froze, gripping Lyra tightly. A tall alien figure stepped out slowly. its skin metallic gray and its eyes glowing amber. It looked dangerous but strangely calm. The creature raised a hand, signaling peace. Evan stepped back, unsure, but Lyra whispered, "Not enemy, a watcher." The alien walked closer with long, graceful steps. Its voice was deep but gentle. "You carry the Axiom Seed. You should not be here." Evan felt panic rise. "Please, she is dying. She needs help," he said. The watcher tilted its head, studying Lyra carefully. Her glowing mark pulsed faintly, and the watcher's eyes widened with respect. "She carries the old blood, the one that can shape energy itself," it whispered. Then it turned and pointed to an old elevator shaft. "The medical station is down there, but it is unstable, dangerous." Evan replied without hesitation, "We'll take the chance." The watcher stepped aside, allowing them to pass. Evan hurried to the elevator, which had no power. He found an old service ladder running down into the darkness. He tied Lyra securely to his chest with torn fabric from his shirt and began climbing down. Each step echoed loudly, and metal flakes rained onto his shoulders. The shaft felt endless, but finally they reached the bottom. A faint blue glow lit the dusty corridor ahead. Broken screens displayed flickering medical symbols. Evan entered slowly, stepping over fallen panels and shattered medical tools. The station had not been used in years, but there was still hope. He found a small med pod lying in the corner, covered in dust. He brushed it off quickly and placed Lyra inside. The pod beeped softly, recognizing biometrics. Lyra's symbol glowed, and the machine activated partially. Lights flickered, showing old readings and half-dead systems. It was working. But barely. Lyra whispered, "It can stabilize me, but it needs energy." Evan looked around desperately. He noticed a large power cable cut from the wall. He followed it until he found the breaker panel. It was broken, rusted, and filled with damaged circuits. He slammed the panel with his fist in frustration. Nothing happened. Then he saw a manual override system hidden behind the wires. He grabbed it and pulled with every bit of strength he had. The entire room shook, sparks flew, and the med pod lit up with sudden brightness. The machine hummed, scanning Lyra's body with soft blue beams. Her breathing grew steady, and some color returned to her face. Evan sighed in relief, tears burning his eyes. She was safe, at least for now, but that relief lasted only a few seconds, because the ground above them shook violently. Dust and metal debris fell from the ceiling. The hunters had traced the energy surge. They were coming, and they were close. Lyra opened her eyes weakly from inside the pod, her voice soft but urgent. "Evan, they will break in soon. You must hide." Evan shook his head fiercely. "I'm not leaving you." She reached out a trembling hand through the opening of the pod and touched his cheek. "You cannot fight them. Please, survive." But before Evan could answer, the metal door at the end of the corridor exploded inward. Blue light flooded the chamber. The hunters stepped in, weapons raised. Their cold metallic voices echoed. "Target detected. Human interference confirmed." Ven grabbed a metal rod and stood between them and Lyra. His eyes filled with fire. He knew he was outmatched. He knew he could die in seconds. But he also knew one thing for certain. He would not let them take her without a fight. The medical station filled with blinding blue light as the hunters stepped through the broken doorway. Their armor glowed with cold energy, and their faces were hidden behind metallic masks. Each step they took echoed like a death sentence in the small chamber. Evan tightened his grip on the metal rod, standing in front of Lyra's med pod like a human shield. His heart beat fast, fear rising inside him, but he refused to move aside. One of the hunters raised his weapon and spoke in a harsh robotic voice. "Human, step away from the Axiom Seed." Evan shook his head, breathing hard. "She's a child. She needs help. She's dying." The hunter responded without emotion. "She is not a child. She is a danger to the galaxy." Evan's hands trembled, but he held his ground. "She's hurt. She can't even walk. How is she dangerous?" he yelled. The hunter stepped forward slowly, weapon ready. Her bloodline holds ancient power. Uncontrollable, unpredictable, unacceptable. Inside the pod, Lyra opened her eyes weakly. Soft blue light surrounded her body as the machine continued, repairing her damaged spine and organs. Hearing the hunter's words, tears formed in her silver eyes. She whispered, barely audible, "They want to erase my lineage." Before it rises again, Evan looked back at her, shock filling his face. But before he could speak, one hunter fired a warning shot at the floor near his foot. The blast shook the entire room. "Move aside," the metallic voice demanded again. Evan raised the metal rod higher. "No," he whispered firmly. The hunters aimed their weapons at him, ready to shoot, but suddenly, the med pod emitted a high-pitched hum. Blue energy surged outward like a wave, pushing the hunters back a step. Lyra's glowing mark pulsed brighter than ever. The machine responded to her energy, scanning deeper into her body. Readings flashed on the screens beside the pod. Evan saw the words Axiom Core Awakening blink repeatedly. Lyra gasped, her body arching slightly from the energy surge. "Evan, something is happening. I can feel everything," she whispered with fear and wonder. The hunters panicked and rushed forward again. "Terminate the process," one shouted. "The awakening must not complete." Evan stepped forward, swinging the metal rod at the first hunter. It hit the armor and bounced off, barely scratching the surface. The hunter grabbed Evan and threw him across the room. He slammed into a metal cabinet and fell to the floor, pain spreading through his ribs. But he forced himself to stand again, driven by something strong inside him. Lyra cried out, "Please stop. Don't hurt him." Her voice trembled, but the energy around her strengthened. The med pod lights changed from blue to gold. A strange, warm wind filled the room, though there was no opening anywhere. Evan stumbled forward again, trying to reach the hunters despite the pain. He grabbed the broken metal pipe from the floor and swung it with all his strength. The hunter blocked it easily, but the distraction slowed them, and that single second was enough for Lyra's power to rise again. A burst of golden light shot from the pod. It hit one of the hunters directly, sending him crashing into the wall. His armor sparked, systems failing. The other hunters stepped back, momentarily stunned. Evan stared in disbelief. "Lyra, what did you do?" Inside the pod, Lyra's eyes glowed brightly. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but her voice sounded stronger. "I didn't mean to. The power. It listens to my emotions. It reacts to fear, to pain, to everything." She lifted her glowing hand weakly. "I don't want to hurt anyone. But they won't stop. They will kill you. They will kill me." The hunters regained their balance and aimed their weapons again. Their leader shouted, "We must finish this now." Evan stood in front of Lyra again, even though he was shaking. "You'll have to go through me," he said, his voice breaking but determined. The hunters fired, but before the blasts could reach him, a curved golden shield formed in front of Evan. The energy waves bent away harmlessly. Evan looked back at Lyra in shock. She was holding her hand toward him, glowing brighter than before. Her voice was soft but filled with emotion. "I won't let them hurt you. You saved me. Now I save you." The hunters tried again and again. More blasts hit the golden barrier, but nothing broke through. They stepped back, confused and afraid. Their leader spoke. "She is awakening too fast. This is impossible." Evan walked closer to the pod. "Lyra, can you move? Can you get out?" She shook her head weakly. "No. The pod is stabilizing my body. If I leave now, my spine could collapse again." Vin realized he had to fight or stall the hunters until the process finished. He grabbed a heavy oxygen tank from the corner and rolled it toward the hunters. It exploded when the next blast hit it, filling the room with smoke and sparks. Evan coughed, blinded, but reached for another tool. Preparing for anything through the smoke, he heard Lyra whisper urgently, "Evan, the pod says 10 more minutes, please." Survive, and for the first time, Evan understood the truth. He was not only protecting a child, he was protecting the future of a powerful ancient lineage, and every force in the galaxy wanted that future erased. But he whispered back through the smoke, "I'm not going anywhere. I'll protect you till my last breath." The hunters charged through the smoke. The pod glowed brighter, and the battle for Lyra's life truly began. Smoke filled the ruined medical station as Evan stood in front of Lyra's glowing med pod. His lungs burned, his vision blurred, but he refused to take one step back. He knew the hunters would come through that smoke any second, and he knew he had to protect Lyra for 10 more minutes. 10 minutes that felt like holding back a collapsing universe. The smoke swirled as the first hunter emerged. His armor cracked from the earlier blast, but still deadly. He raised his glowing weapon and fired at Evan. Evan dove behind a metal table, sparks flying over his head like shooting stars. His heart raced, but he remembered Lyra's words. 10 minutes. Please, survive. Evan grabbed the table, pushed it over, and used it as a shield. The hunter's blast struck it again and again, shaking the metal violently. Each impact felt like thunder in his bones. He peeked from behind the table and threw a heavy wrench. At the nearest hunter, it bounced off the armor harmlessly, but the distraction forced the hunter to step back, buying Evan a few precious seconds. Behind him, Lyra's pod glowed brighter. Golden light spread across the room like rising dawn. Her breathing grew steady, her heartbeat strong, but she could not move. She could not help him. She could only watch through the pod's transparent shield. Crying softly as Evan fought alone, another hunter charged forward through the smoke, slamming into Evan like a metal wall. Evan flew back and crashed into a console, pain exploding across his ribs. He gasped for breath and tried to stand, but the hunter grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the floor. His feet kicked helplessly, his vision fading. Lyra screamed inside the pod, her hands glowing. "No. Let him go, please." Her golden light burst outward again. This time it struck the hunter holding Evan. The armor sparked violently, and the hunter dropped Evan. Stumbling back in confusion, Evan fell to the floor, coughing hard, trying to breathe, but he forced himself up again. He knew Lyra was using her strength to protect him, and he refused to waste even one drop of that strength. Another explosion shook the room. The back wall collapsed and 2 more. Hunters entered. Their weapons hummed with deadly blue energy. Their leader pointed at the pod and shouted, "The Axiom seed is stabilizing. Complete termination is necessary." Evan's fury rose like fire. "She's a child. She hasn't done anything," he shouted back. The leader responded coldly, "Her potential is enough." Then grabbed a broken cable from the wall and swung it at the nearest hunter. Sparks flew where the metal hit the armor. The hunter swung back and Evan barely dodged, rolling across the floor. He grabbed a metal shard from the ground and jabbed it under the hunter's arm joint. The armor cracked and the hunter staggered backward. Evan pushed harder, knowing it was his only chance. With a desperate yell, he twisted the shard deeper. The hunter collapsed, systems failing, but the victory was short. The leader hunter fired a blast that struck Evan in the shoulder. He fell to his knees, pain spreading like fire. His vision dimmed, but he forced himself to look at Lyra. Her face was pressed against the pod's transparent shield, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Evan, please get up, please," she begged. Evan clenched his teeth and stood again. His legs shook, but he stood. Because she needed him. Because he promised. The leader and the remaining hunter approached together, 2 against 1. Armored against unarmored. Brutal against. Exhausted, but Evan lifted a metal beam from the rubble and held it like a weapon. He breathed hard, his body screaming in pain. But his eyes were steady, determined. The hunters fired. But Lyra's golden shield rose again. A curved barrier formed between Evan and the blasts. The hunters increased their power, pushing against the shield. Cracks formed in the golden glow. Lyra screamed in pain as her energy drained. "Evan, hurry." 10 minutes. Almost. Evan gripped the metal beam with both hands. He charged forward, slamming the beam into the nearest hunter's weapon. The shot misfired. Exploding in the hunter's hand, the blast threw him backward, sparks flying everywhere. The leader roared and tackled Evan to the ground. They rolled across the debris, fighting with raw desperation. The leader's strength was overwhelming. His metal knee pressed into Evan's chest, crushing the air out of him. A cold blade extended from the hunter's wrist. "I will end this now," he said. Lyra cried out, "No." Evan. Her golden symbol burst into blinding light. The entire pod shook violently. Golden cracks spread across the glass like glowing veins. And with a powerful pulse of energy, the pod shattered outward. Lyra floated above the ruins, surrounded by swirling gold light, her eyes blazing with ancient power, her voice echoing like something older than the stars. "No one touches him." The leader turned in shock. Too late, a wave of golden energy rushed forward, surrounding the hunter and lifting him into the air. His armor cracked, then burst apart. He fell to the ground unconscious, defeated. Lyra landed gently beside Evan, her legs still paralyzed, her body weak, but she reached for him with shaking hands. "Evan, I'm here. You're safe now." Evan looked at her through blurred eyes. "You saved me," he whispered. She whispered back with trembling breath, "You saved me first." But their victory was short-lived, because outside the broken door, heavy footsteps echoed again, more hunters, stronger ones, and they were coming fast. The broken medical station trembled again as new footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. These were heavier, sharper, filled with a rhythm that meant only one thing. Stronger hunters were coming, not simple soldiers, not trackers, but elite executioners built to erase anything connected to the Axiom bloodline. Evan stood slowly, still. Bleeding from his wounds, his shoulder burning with pain, he could barely stay balanced. But he took one step in front of Lyra anyway. He held a piece of broken metal like a weapon, gripping it with the last strength left in his bones. Lyra floated down beside him, the golden glow around her flickering weakly now. Her power was great. But her body was still injured, paralyzed, fragile. She would not be able to protect them for long. "Evan, they are stronger. I cannot shield us again." "Not fully," she whispered. Evan looked at her with soft but determined eyes. "It's okay. Then I'll stand for both of us," he replied, his voice shaky but brave. The door exploded inward again, metal flying everywhere like sharp rain. 4 elite hunters entered, their armor black and covered with glowing red lines. Their presence filled the entire room with fear. They moved in perfect formation, silent, cold, deadly. One of them scanned the room and spoke in a deep mechanical voice. "The Axiom seed has awakened. Termination must be immediate." Another hunter pointed directly at Evan. "Eliminate the human first. He is interfering." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. "No. Please, don't hurt him," she whispered desperately. But the hunters didn't listen. They raised their weapons, energy building at the tips. Evan pushed Lyra gently behind him, even though she still floated weakly with golden sparks around her hands. He spread his arms, protecting her with his entire body. "If you want her, you go through me first," he said quietly. The hunters aimed, ready to fire. But suddenly, everything stopped. A soft vibration filled the room. The lights flickered, the air thickened like heavy fog, and the symbol glowing on Lyra's chest burst into blinding light. Her voice echoed through the chamber, not loud, not angry, but ancient and powerful. "Enough," she whispered, and the sound rippled like thunder. The hunters froze, their systems glitching. Their red lights flickered, then dimmed. Something in Lyra's voice reached deep into their programming. Something older than their orders, older than their masters. Lyra floated higher, her small hands glowing like tiny suns. The golden light wrapped around her like flowing ribbons. She did not look dangerous. She looked peaceful. But the power inside her was overwhelming. You call me a danger. But you do not understand, she whispered. Her eyes glowed with soft silver light. I do not want to rule. I do not want to destroy. I only want to live. One hunter tried to fire despite the interference, but the golden ribbons of energy wrapped around his arm. Gently lowering the weapon, another hunter stepped back in confusion. This power, it should not exist. This is impossible. Lyra lowered herself to the ground. Her legs still did not move, her body still weak, but her presence felt larger than the entire room. Evan stepped beside her, placing a steady hand on her back. He didn't understand her power. He didn't understand her destiny, but he understood her, a lost child who needed someone who wouldn't throw her away. Lyra looked up at him with trembling eyes. They fear me because of what I might become. But you looked at me like I was a person, she whispered. Evan smiled softly, tired but warm. You are a person, and you deserve to live. Her glow brightened again, not wild, not dangerous, but calm and gentle like warm sunlight. She lifted her hand slowly. A wave of golden light spread across the room, passing through Evan harmlessly. But when it touched the hunters, their armor shut down completely. Their weapons dissolved into dust, and with a final low hum, they all collapsed on the ground, unconscious but alive. The station went silent. Only the soft hum of the broken machines remained. Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted. The golden glow faded slowly. Evan rushed forward and caught her before she fell fully. She leaned into him, breathing hard. Evan, I'm tired, but we're safe, she whispered. He held her tightly. Because of you. We both are, he whispered back. Moments later, soft footsteps echoed from the hallway, but these were not hunters. They were lighter, more graceful, almost ceremonial. A group of tall alien figures entered, wearing long white armor decorated with glowing symbols. They kneeled immediately when they saw Lyra. Their leader lowered his head and said in a deep, respectful voice, Princess Lyra, heir of the Axiom line, we have come to take you home. Lyra looked at Evan, fear in her eyes. I don't want to go alone, she whispered. Evan squeezed her hand gently. You won't, he said with a soft smile. The Axiom Guardians lifted their heads. Their leader spoke with deep respect. Then the human will come with us. By her command, and when Evan lifted Lyra into his arms again, he felt something he had never felt before. Not fear, not confusion, but a new future opening in front of them, a path he never expected, a destiny he never chose, but one he would protect forever, because he didn't just save an alien girl, he saved a future, and she saved him right back. Together, they stepped into the bright corridor, leaving the darkness of the Undercity behind, ready to face a galaxy that would never be the same again.